The following segment is sponsored by Tigre Silver Corp, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. Tigre Silver Corp is focused on silver exploration and development in prolific Sonora State, Mexico. Find them on the web at eltigresilvercorp.com. Join me for a conversation with a frequent guest of the show, David Morgan, the Silver Guru, an expert on money, metals, and mining, also a lecturer and an author. Mr. Morgan has written Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, available on Amazon.com. His website is themorganreport.com. David, welcome back to the program.
Oh, it's great to be back.
We've got a few things to talk about today, but first I understand from speaking with you and other friends in the Spokane, Washington area that you had a double shot of power outages there. Something we think about here in Los Angeles, should we happen to have an earthquake or something of that nature, is to prepare for this sort of thing. Whether it's stocking up on water, food, toiletries, propane stoves, canned goods, dried goods, provisions in general, I think we're probably one of the few cities in the country where people actually think about that sort of thing and prepare for it. But living out in the country like you do, among the trees and nature with neighbors not too terribly close, I suspect you too are prepared.
Yeah, you've been here, and, I live in the woods by design. That's where I want to be. And, I actually moved here in 1999, and one of my dreams was to live in the country, have a front porch, and have both those things. And during the 99 thing, the Y2K was being really hyped, and so I made some preps, and I wasn't over the top, but I'll admit that I was concerned. I wasn't so concerned about, an apocalypse. I was more concerned about the banking systems being able to talk to each other. My main concern at that time was that if a money center bank, like a New York bank, couldn't interface with, an Italian bank because the Italians didn't bother to upgrade their computers, it wouldn't be the fault of the money center bank. It would be the fault of the interfacing bank. So I had some concern. I did a couple things. I wasn't even going to bother putting on an external power source, but after I moved here, I talked to the locals and they told me about this massive ice storm that had taken place, which would be similar to a California earthquake, meaning that it's a natural disaster that causes quite a disruption in normal activity, normal electrical power distribution, that kind of thing. So I bit the bullet, bought a generator, and had the house wired where it was minimal service, with 5,000 watts that could run one bedroom lights, a microwave, no stove, no oven, the well pump because I'm on a well system, refrigerator, and the freezer. So I have the refrigerator, the freezer, a microwave, and a well pump, and that's basically it. So when the power went out a couple of weeks ago, I really wasn't that concerned about anything other than keeping the freezer going, so I pulled the generator out, give Honda a plug here, no pun intended, and pulled it a couple times, started to ride up, plugged in the freezer, and it took about 3 days to get the power back. So it was a little more comfortable. My daughter, who lives with me, said, "Oh, this is fun." I said, "It'll be fun for about 3 days. After that, you'll start to really consider how much you rely on the power system and that kind of thing." And she has a lot of friends. She's very social. She took off and showered down at one of her friends' homes and that kind of thing. So the power came back on, put the generator away, cleaned up, learned a few things about what the preparation mode is like, and never really thought much about it. But lo and behold, we got another power outage. So on this one, I coupled the generator to the house outlet that's installed way back when, and had the systems I outlined, the refrigerator, the freezer, the microwave, some lights, and the well pump. And life was much easier when you have the ability to take a shower whenever you want. So that was very much a luxury, because some of our neighbors, there's 71 in this neighborhood, I found out from the power company, and I know all 71 don't have backup sources. There are a few generators going on in the neighborhood. So it was a real kind of a wake-up call. These things do happen. It wasn't a big inconvenience. It was very much, again, of a luxury to have that and have it work. I mean, the biggest inconvenience of all was putting in some gas every 4 hours. I mean, that generator would power everything that was on the circuit, which, again, was minimal, for 4 hours at a crack. So it was easy to, fill it up and then take off for a couple hours to go down to the coffee shop and use the internet system that was up and running there. I don't know how to emphasize it too strongly, but yeah, these things do happen. And I guess one thing I'll leave with, Ellis, and you can ask all the questions you want, is what happened the first time. I thought, this is a 1 in 15-year event and no biggie, and I'm glad I had the generator and put it away, never dreaming that within a couple of weeks it would happen again.
Now, this doesn't necessarily make you an apocalyptic prepper. You don't strike me me is the type, David. It just makes good sense for someone out in the woods like you are. And when I say out in the woods, I don't mean you're living in a tent or a shack. You've got a house out in the country. I've been there. It's a great house. It makes good sense for you to have a generator, and you've had a chance to test that system twice. Now, haven't you? Do you think you're ready for anything now?
Well, the generator thing is interesting. I mean, it provides all the modern-day conveniences, but let's just take it. First of all, I agree. I mean, I'm prepared, but I'm not in the mindset that the end of the world is imminent. But like I said, I basically wasn't going to bother with the generator at all. But then after talking to locals in the ice storm in the kind of middle of winter out here in Washington State, it gets pretty darn cold. So having a generator was literally a lifesaver for some people. And I don't want to hype it up too much. So that's what kind of weighed that against, the cost. And it was the time to do it because this is a spec home, and it was the time to modify it easily because it was the time to do it. And I'm glad I did. And obviously it came in very, very handy.
So in addition to preparing for your future financially, whether it's investing in physical metals, a basket of stocks, a cash reserve, spend some money on keeping your castle hooked up should things go south.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you listen to some of the other people in the silver space, the precious metal space, or whatever, I mean, a lot of them push the prepping thing, which I'm not against. I mean, I've always said, people have asked me, I don't get on a topic often, but I think it's good that we're doing a show because people might want to know where I stand on it. But, on the food thing, I think it's smart to have some. I mean, it's a zero-lose game as far as I'm concerned. If you have extra food, the worst that can happen is you eat it. If something like this happens, you just go ahead and have yourself something already that you plan for. So it's a good thing. I want to just back up a little bit on the generator story. I left a kind of an important part out of it. I think this is important for the listeners. So on the first power outage, I did what I said, but I went down to the local feed store here, and our feed store is like huge. It's called Big R. You can look it up on the internet. So it's more than just animal feed, which is, kind of how the company started, but they sell women's apparel, men's apparel. It's like a huge hardware store, feed store, clothing store, garden supply. I mean, it's a big, big situation. And so I'm in there, and I'm getting a couple things I need. And I thought, I'm looking around for generators just to see, if they even sell them, because I figured they did. And I couldn't see any, but they had all kinds of other big equipment, welders and air compressors and that kind of thing. So I asked one of the employees, do you carry generators? And he goes, we did. And so my mind immediately thinks, they did, 5 years ago. But he completes his sentence. He goes, we did. This morning we had 34 generators at 9 when we opened. By 10 o'clock, they were all gone. So the reason I want to tell that part of the story, Ellis, is that you can tell that a lot of people aren't prepared. And when this power outage happened, this is the first one. I lost out for 3 days on that one. A lot of people ran down to the nearest place that they could get to buy what they didn't have, which was a generator. For me, it was no big deal because I had one that was ready to go. But I just want to emphasize that a lot of people kind of look, like, why bother, or won't happen, or I don't need it, or whatever. And I'm not saying everyone to go get a generator. That's not my point. My point is that when things do happen, most people aren't prepared, and things that you absolutely do need get taken out of the store really, really quickly.
If you're living in a place where you can store a generator, it wouldn't be a bad idea to just have one.
Yeah, it didn't do me any harm, that's for sure. Like I said, on the second round, when I plugged it in properly to the house, it was just pretty darn nice to have it.
We'll be right back. The Ellis Martin Report is sponsored by Tigre Silver Corp, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. Silver has been considered a precious metal for 6,000 years and currency since 600 BC. It's been commercially mined in Mexico since 1530 in mineral-prolific and mining-friendly Sonora State. El Tigre's properties with gold and silver mining concessions span 215 square kilometers, or 83 square miles. With an attractive share structure and a strong, proven management team, El Tigre Silver Corp is poised to identify a resource in an area that from 1903 to 1938 produced 75 million ounces of silver and 380,000 ounces of gold. Additionally, their tailing stockpile is currently progressing to production. Learn more about El Tigre Silver Corp by visiting their website, eltigresilvercorp.com, or click through El Tigre's logo on the homepage of our website, ellismartinreport.com.
We offer expert opinions only. Find them on our website, ellismartinreport.com. That's ellismartinreport.com.
And we're back. Aside from talking about preparations for the coming apocalypse, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, although not entirely. You and I have called this particular interview in session primarily to discuss a company that has been a sponsor of this particular segment for quite some time, El Tigre Silver Corp, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS. You are a shareholder of El Tigre Silver Corp. Our mutual friend Dudley Baker of CommonStockWarrants.com posted an article on his website and newsletter with a headline, El Tigre Silver, Investors Beware. Now, in this dormant market for precious metals, El Tigre stock jumped from 15 cents up to 40 cents on no news. In fact, the company put out a news release saying exactly that their stock moved on no news. What happened was actually there was a couple of company insiders that bought some shares, a significant amount compared to the typical volume during this cycle for the company. One of them purchased about 500,000 shares of stock, while company CEO Stuart Ross purchased a modest 8,000 shares. Not necessarily significant on its own, but the question begs, don't the insiders know something? And if so, what kind of news to begin with could be that big in this particular non-existent market that could almost triple a stock?
Well, great questions. First of all, I'm a shareholder, and secondly, I am not going to sell any because, I have to be very careful with what I do for a living. Then I can't, broadcast how great a company is or isn't and then sell into that. So regardless of what the price does over the next 10 days, and I probably won't sell after 10, but for certain, I want everyone to know that from the time this broadcast onward, I will not be selling. So I called Stuart and had a long talk with him, and usually I'm pretty good at determining whether or not someone's got information they can't give me, and a lot of times it'll be up front. Basically, I am not allowed, and this happens from time to time, Ellis, and it does, where people will give me inside information, and of course, one, I can't trade on it, and two, I can't give it even to my subscribers because it's illegal. The only thing I'm allowed to do is to put our opinion out, if it changes or not, and I'm also allowed to publish whatever is in the public domain. But, the way we make money is, we find undervalued situations, and on it goes. People know basically what we do, I'm sure. But when it comes to a situation like this, so I spoke with him, and of course the first thing he told me is that, I'll reiterate what he said, is that they put out a press release stating there was no material change. And I don't know. So that's the most important thing, is I don't know. So we could speculate all day and be wrong in every speculation. Normally when there's a large amount of stock that's being handled, it has to do with a possible buyout. Now, what he did tell me, Stuart Ross, the CEO, was that one of the major broker-dealers may have decided to kind of test the water, meaning to see if they want to do a hostile takeover or just buy out the company, how hard it would be to do. So they had a 500,000 share trade go across the wires, and that took the stock, and I'm giving the idea, I don't know the exact number, but I think the exact number I recall was something like 36 cents to 50 cents. And then, of course, they backed off because there weren't any trades of that large a block. So what that would indicate to a company that wanted to take over this one is that it'd be difficult, because 500,000 shares is probably a fair amount of, it's a good whack of stock, but it's not significant relative to the amount you need to take over the company and get a controlling interest in that type of thing. So that is, in my mind, probably the most likely scenario. The other thing, Stuart and I have known each other for a long time, and it's like many of these smaller companies have pretty good assets, and so someone that's got cash in this environment, meaning that the mining cycles with a low currently, although some of the stocks are actually doing pretty good off the bottom, in other words, and look like they're clawing their way back up, might be doing some very good mining, meaning that it's easier to buy an asset that you know about, property you know about, project you know about, location, etc., than to go find another one. And when you do the math, do the arithmetic, it's cheaper to buy one than it is to go find one, or drill one, or redrill one, or whatever. So I think it's more along those lines. 8,000 shares if you bought it, whatever it was, 15 cents is nothing. I mean, for the CEO to buy that. Now, the other guy, I forget his name, that bought a pretty good whack. Maybe he knows something that Stuart doesn't. I mean, that's a stretch. I doubt it. I mean, the CEO's probably going to know as much or more than anybody in the company. But we just have to wait and see. And, and I respect Dudley a great deal. And I agree with him. Insiders usually buy, a lot because they know something's going on. But it doesn't prove it. So I don't have any further comments. You might have some other ideas. I'll certainly answer them. Again, I'm not going to sell anything because I don't want to be pushing it. Then it's a speculation. It's always been. In fact, it's actually not in the speculative list at the current time. I think we got stopped out of the stock quite some time ago. But it is definitely one in the junior category. But I do like the management. I do like the project.
Well, this is the right environment for hostile takeover bids, isn't it?
Yes, it is. In fact, we did a whole Morgan report on what we felt would be the most likely takeover targets and the most likely takeover buyers. In other words, both sides of the transaction, who were ripe for the picking and who had the pockets to pick them. What's interesting is an investment bank up in Vancouver that does a newsletter of their own. I don't want to accuse anybody. I'll just call it a coincidence. But their report was very, very similar to the Morgan report. So you can take that however you want. But regardless, El Tigre wasn't one that we had featured on there.
Well, this is certainly interesting. I've, of course, been to the El Tigre property in Sonora State, Mexico. I've seen the core samples. They've done quite a bit of drilling. I'm not the mining expert you are, by all means, but I can certainly see where at some point in the future they'd be a takeover or a buyout candidate. And if it is indeed possible, perhaps those in the company are merely saying by accumulating more shares in their own company, go ahead, try it. It may not be as easy or inexpensive as you might think to take out a company such as El Tigre.
Exactly. After talking to Stuart, he really thought that after that move by this bank, it took 50 cents would back down, which it did. And he thinks things are going to quiet down. I again know him. You have to take me. This is my gut feeling is that really there hasn't been much really happening. I could be proven wrong. My guess is it hasn't really been a material change. It's just undervalued, and someone's taken a run at it for a test case only, and they backed off of that. I think it'll settle back down. We'll see. Look at the chart. It was a rocket ship. And a lot of interest. Believe me, I got a lot of phone calls and a fair amount of emails. So people do follow these small stocks even in a dull market, and some of them do rocket up. If I was in the position I'm in, the way to play it, of course, is on those big runs like that. Don't get too greedy, sell half your position or whatever, and, ride the rest for free. It's called a free trade, and it's a nice way to play some of these smaller stocks. But they're still up there, of course. And the reason I only sell half is because, if it goes to $2, and you sold out on a double or something, and it goes, far, far higher, then you're going to kick yourself. If it goes from 39 cents to $2 3 years from now or whatever, you might be upset that you sold some. But you know what? You've done a really smart thing. You basically got no downside risk and all upside potential. And as an investor, who wouldn't want that position? Just think if everything that you owned as an investment had no downside risk anymore, and on the upside. Wouldn't that be a nice way to trade? Of course, we've taught that for years, and we employ it with our speculative list. But honestly, we haven't had super success, although our speculative list is looking a lot better. Our zinc play that we put out quite some time ago is doing quite well, and it's not a double yet, so you can get that free trade. But again, interestingly, and I don't think anyone, maybe they did, I doubt it. I won't sound like we are leaders on everything, but we were, as far as I know, one of the earliest to talk about how severe the zinc situation is going to be in a couple of years. And there have been other analysts throughout the spectrum that have now talked about that. It's pretty well known among those who study the metals as hard as we do. But zinc, although it might not be as sexy as silver, is certainly something that has a lot of good supply-demand fundamentals going forward.
So you've taken a keen interest in base metals as well that are not necessarily tied to the financial market, perhaps less speculative plays. Is that right?
Yeah, the website's silverinvestor.com or themorganreport.com. They both go to the same website. I changed it to the Morgan Report because I didn't want everyone to think it was silver only, because it's not. We look at the resource sector across the board and find things that make sense. And we are really pretty much value investors. Really, that's what we look for. So everything we do in the top tier is pretty much based on value analysis, because you can do it, because you can actually analyze a company. On the mid-tier, you can do that somewhat, but there's a lot of exploration or increased potential, because a lot of these are just mines that are early in the production phase, so they can squeeze their margin, meaning they can make more profit. And then on the speculative side, there's really no way to determine a value investment when you're looking at speculation, although maybe the driller that we have in there. So I changed the Morgan Report because two things. One, I wanted to make sure that people knew that we looked at all the resources. It's basically a resource newsletter. And secondly, when this phase is over, when we get to the top of the market and I put the big sell, and 80% of the people hate me because I'm wrong, and then it goes higher or whatever. I want to be able to keep writing. I want to be able to continue to work in the financial realm, and maybe something that's as appealing to me as silver was when nobody wanted it. I'm not saying that will be the case, but I want to have the opportunity to continue on because I love what I do. I love helping people. I love the financial markets, and but it's so precarious this time, meaning having lived through one bull market. What will happen then at the end of this one? Because unless and until the monetary system is reformed, it's going to be a very big challenge as far as how this thing is going to end. And no one knows that. I don't. There's greater minds than myself out there talking about it. You can listen to any or all the many others that are in the field that talk about this, pretty much on a daily or weekly basis.
Does anyone really know what's going on in the coming months? I usually ask you that question this time of year every year. What you might see coming for the fall. But I think this time that might be an unfair question of me.
I'm good on the medium term, long term. On these calls at the end of the year, I always call you up in January for what's price of silver going to be at the end of the year. I really dislike that game because calling the year out is pretty tough. I think I've had a 50% accuracy record on that. But if you were a subscriber, my accuracy record is far superior to that because near-term data is better at determining what the price will be. For an example, I think a couple of years ago, I thought we would get to the $26 level by the end of the year. And one of my members said, David, are you sure? And I wrote for everybody. I'm absolutely sure I'm wrong. It won't be 26. We're not going to see it. And I explained why and showed the charts and did my voiceover and a whole bit. If you're serious, you can subscribe. If you're not, it's okay. But what in the next month? I was thinking about that this morning. August is historically the low month for gold. Does that mean this August is going to be the low month for gold? No, it does not. But the probability of it is greater than any other month. That's statistically provable. It doesn't mean it will happen. I think we've really seen the bottoms in both metals, but we'll see. A year ago, the 28th of June, 2013, the 1817 print still holds as the low for silver so far. And it hasn't done any of that in over a year. So far, that's held as the low. Does that mean it's not going to go under that price? No, of course not. But I really doubt it. There's a lot still in the precious metals camp that expect to see a huge washout bottom somewhere along the line, especially if there's a stock market crash, et cetera, et cetera. I don't. I think that we're bottoming. I think buying in this level and continue to buy at this level or lower or higher. But at this range is a good time to buy it. I don't think you want to try and pick a bottom. It's very difficult. I did have a trade on at $21 breakout point, and I thought we'd get a rally for a couple bucks or $1.50 anyway. And we didn't, and I got stopped out on that trade. And everyone knows that follows my work on the Basic Plus service just gets to watch what I'm doing. So my feelings aren't hurt. I don't win every one. I don't expect to, but I'm waiting again to find a good entry point, and I'm not anxious. I think it's going to take more time. So we're near the end of the bottom. The true bottom may already be in, but we're still in the bottoming process. So that's how I see it, Ellis. I don't think there's anything drastic ahead. It's unfortunate that the metals aren't moving higher based on the geopolitical situation, because with all this going on the war front, you would really expect gold especially to do much better than it is currently. And it just kind of goes to show that not only the summer doldrums is part of it, maybe, but that the management of the interest in the metals from the paper paradigm still has a lot of control.
I think one of the messages you and I would both like to purvey, David, especially after listening to this interview, is if you have a basket of stocks that you've collected in your portfolio, pay attention to what they're doing. Keep an eye out and look for both buying and selling opportunities with regard to what you already hold. Correct?
Absolutely. It's an active thing. We do our best for due diligence to get you going. We show our model portfolio. People always ask, what are you doing? What's in that portfolio is pretty much what I'm doing. It's basically, there's some off investments that I don't show in there or whatever. I mean, I've taken on some really highly speculative situations that I don't think I can risk the money I can afford to lose, which is less and less these days. But, a lot of times it paid off by not doing it for my subscribers, because, let me be the one to lose money, not you. Not to say that, we haven't had some situations here in the last couple of years that certainly have been tough on everyone, yours truly included. Nonetheless, I think the worst is behind us. The stocks are showing pretty good strength. The metal stocks, when they start to lead like they're doing currently, it's usually the indication that the bottom is in. So again, I think it is, but it's certainly not going to rocket up from here. I wish it were showing more strength. I wish we were getting more interest in the metals, but it will happen when it's supposed to happen. That's all I can say. When it's supposed to happen, all things included, meaning, the management of the metals prices, etc., because there's no fever like gold fever. There is nothing even close to it. And when it takes hold, there's not much that even the powers that be can do to stop it.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next round of Gold Fever. All the different ways to follow you, what are they?
YouTube, Silver Guru, Twitter at SilverGuru22, themorganreport.com. There's a blog on the website, don't forget that. You can get on our free e-letter at themorganreport.com. If you're serious about metals investing or resource investing, check out the membership features over on the right-hand side of the website, and it's a 30-day money-back guarantee. You can come in, and some people have done this. I'm not recommending it, and I really don't like it, but you could actually literally come in and download everything on the website. We do get emails from new subscribers from time to time that after they subscribe, give us an email that goes basically like this: wow, I can't believe all the information that you have in the members section. I had no idea, how much work and videos, etc. you guys do till I became a member. So I know it's self-promotional, but my subscription base has been dying for the last 3 years. I like to see it come back up and be honest about that.
David, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. We've covered quite a bit of ground today. Another enjoyable and informative conversation. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, Ellis. Thanks for having me back.
I've been speaking with David Morgan. Find him at themorganreport.com. And listen to the segment again on the podcast page of our website, ellismartinreport.com. This segment has been sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. El Tigre Silver Corp is focused on silver exploration and development in prolific Sonora State, Mexico.